What's the show called again?
I'm Still Here.
I'm Still Here. That's what it's called. Do you use Elaine Stritch in the opening?
Well, I wanted to, and then we were like, we don't have the rights. And I was like, can we use a little bit? And they were like, that's not how it works. You can't do like a tiny
Just
amount
3 notes
of copyright infringement. But we have different music that I feel like. Welcome to I'm Still Here, a podcast on making art after kids. I'm Kate Tellers.
And I'm Mary Atkins, and we're parents who are also people who make art.
What do we mean by art, Mary?
Just creative stuff.
Yep.
And today we are here with Carolyn Castiglia.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me here.
So I was reading, actually, let's go meta here. So I was reading on the train. Have you guys seen, there's an article in the Times about interviewing Terry Gross about how to do a good interview.
No, I did not see it.
So there's a few tips that she has, but one of the tips that she has that I would like to try, she said the best interview question is, tell me about yourself.
Oh, fuck no.
Yeah, you don't like that? You don't want to tell us about yourself?
No,
That's
I hate open-ended questions.
Yeah.
I like very pointed questions with a real clear agenda. Yeah.
I heard she does a lot of her interviews remotely. Isn't that surprising?
You know why you heard that?
It doesn't. Yes.
I told you.
No, but we heard it at the same place.
I know. We heard it at the book event, at Angela Garber's book event. Put that in the liner notes. But yeah.
So funny. This whole episode, all I'm going to be doing is staring at your earrings. For the listeners, these guys have matching earrings on. It's so crazy to me. And I wish I had known, because I would have gotten a pair.
Well, yours are oval and mine are round.
Different.
We'll describe them
that
so everyone knows.
Pair, though, that Kate has on.
They are resin, correct?
Yeah, they're resin.
They're resin.
I had one pair of resin earrings. They broke because I tend to sleep in my makeup and earrings.
Well, no, tell me about yourself.
I mean, I'm busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're resin and they're various shades of resin. But they're both from Bobble Bar, which is an Instagram targeted ad. We both
fallen.
So we were almost going to talk about this before the pod, and then I said, save it for the pod, because I want to talk about how the targeted ads have finally been hitting me too. Maybe they know that moms are just like scrolling the gram, to fall asleep at night. And I'm scrolling the gram the other night, and what comes up is this Pat McGrath makeup ad. Now, do you guys know about Pat McGrath? Okay. She has the most beautiful, intense, crazy pigmented makeup. It's gorgeous. And she's got this lipstick that is like glitter, basically. It's glitter lipstick, and it comes in like 7 different shades. And then it was a video ad, and so one of the models had all 7 shades like perfectly, blended together on one set of lips. And I was like, I need this in my life. To fall asleep in as I fall asleep in my makeup. Yeah. And
did you know about it before, or did you discover
I knew about it because my friend taught me about her makeup. So, you start to hang out with richer people as you get older, and then they let you in on the really good shit, And so, she came up in my Insta, and I really hit the buy button. Yeah. And then it was like $70. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't spend this much money on lipstick. So I did not do it, but I did buy a pin from Instagram from this woman. I'm sorry, I can't think of her name right now, but she's a designer. She designs cute cards and pins and
Emily
things like
O'Donnell. I have her keychain. I'm not fucking kidding, right?
I don't know, probably.
Yeah.
And it's called a Persistethist.
Oh,
and it's similar name. It's like Katie McSmith or something, whatever. Yeah. And so I did order that off Instagram.
Okay, so
tell us what you do.
Well, I'm a stand-up comedian. Mm-hmm. I am the head of editorial at a brand new comedy app called Laugh Exchange, which is wonderful. I love it so much, and we're really just building the app right now. I mean, it's built, but I mean, we're building our whole business and our whole family of comics, and so it's been 4 months of just kind of constant work and producing 3 shows a week, which it's amazing.
And that's a ton. That's a lot.
It's a ton of work. And, but when you do a lot of work, it's really, if you love what you do, it's really satisfying, but it's hard to create boundaries when you have your dream job finally, right? Yeah. And then you're like, oh, but I'm also really tired. Yeah. I've been working like 7 days a week. And my kid is, she's sort of like, will make snide remarks now because she's 13 and she'll be like, oh, nice of you to join me for dinner.
Can she do, like, I only know how to raise a child that is as old as my son. Like, I know nothing about the future. I learn each day. Yeah. So tell me what a 13-year-old is like.
Well, they can tie their shoes.
Perfect. Love it.
They mostly no longer shit themselves. No, so she is in 8th grade and she gets to school by herself every day on the New York City subway. She comes home. She'll either do after school, hang out with her friends. 1 day a week she has dance, and then she'll come home by herself. She's getting ready to babysit, if you're interested. I think she could also pet sit at this point.
I love that you're like, she's definitely cool with babies. I'm not sure that she's for your cat.
People are precious about their cats. Yeah, and I mean, she speaks in complete sentences.
Yeah.
Learning another language. She takes Spanish in school. She's learning a little Dutch from her dad and from Duolingo. And yeah, mostly, God, it's amazing how she turned 13 and then 4 days later, she literally turned to me and just basically was like, what's up? It was like the bitchiness was on.
Oh no.
And I said to her today, I was like, look, you can gain your independence and I can help you foster your independence without us doing this bullshit. You know what I mean? Because it's just the two of us and I don't want to have discord.
Yeah.
But we're like that. I mean, we're very Gilmore Girls-ish.
You have a podcast together.
We do. It's called Daughter Knows Best. We have not put up an episode in a while. And if she was here, she would say, that's because you. Da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, she would say it was my fault. It probably is my fault. And she, it's funny because like we'll turn the tables on each other all the time. Like, at first I was the one who was like, if we're going to do this, we need to take it seriously. And then 8 or 9 episodes in, she's like, Mom, if we're going to do this, we need to take it seriously. So we have a lot of fun together. I mean, it's a really good time. Like we have a great relationship and I definitely have done so much to make sure that that's the case because I had a terrible mother growing up and my mother and I only have a decent relationship now because I did a bunch of fucking back-breaking work in therapy and like, laid the smack down with her where I was just like, listen, this is how it's going to be. And if you can't be like this, I'm not talking to you. And then it sort of worked itself out.
So I have like 2 streams of questions from this. So I'll go with the most recent. Were you always in communication with your mother through like the toxicity or was there a break that you then were able to come back to her?
Yeah, both. I mean, so I was always in communication with my mother, being very hurt and in pain. And if you shout out to all the gals with narcissistic mothers out there, if that's your life story, like it's so oppressive, right? Mm-hmm. You really can't get out from under the weight of that because girls identify so much with their mothers anyway. And then, when you have this controlling, larger than life, and then possibly verbally abusive, physically abusive, threatening, stealing, angry, jealous, petty mother, it just clouds your whole worldview. And my mother and her voice in my head was like the center of my whole life outside of then the relationships with men that I was engaging in to try to, unbeknownst to myself, up until a certain point, resolve my issues with her.
Yeah.
So, then I entered a marriage that then became a divorce. And after that, started going to therapy and learning about all of these dynamics. And so it was through my therapeutic process that I figured out, okay, number one, I can start telling the truth about this dynamic, period. Like that in and of itself is a huge moment when you finally stop feeling guilty or like you have to protect them. You know, I just was like, hey, this is my story. This is my truth. And I got to tell it or I'm not going to get any better. Right. So that was one piece of it. And then once you admit all of the pain to yourself and that it's not you, it's them, and that there's a huge problem, most people, if they're going to get truly better, decide to break away in some form or another. Right. Yeah. Not everybody goes no contact. I did go no contact with my mom for a couple of years.
Wow.
And
was this when you had your daughter?
Yeah. This was pretty recently.
Wow.
So, and I had to because she wasn't hearing me. You know, I kept begging her, like, understand this, learn about it, go to therapy, resolve your shit, treat me well, you know, and she just could not do it. And so I had to do what I had to do, you know, and it wasn't until I went no contact that then really my PTSD really kind of came to the surface. It's such a crazy like experience of, you know, swallowing your own pain and living in codependence where you're like smiling and bleeding at the same time. Yeah. And then as you let go of that modality, moving into this new thing where your body's just like trying to get all of the trauma out and like resolve it or transform it. And so that was just a different kind of painful experience, full of anxiety and dread and intrusive thoughts and all that sort of thing. And then more recently, all of that has sort of subsided and I've come into this new era of like feeling good, you know, and feeling like I'm in charge, I'm in control. And part of moving into this new era was really like reaching back out to my mother and putting my foot down with her and saying, I need to know that you know, because I told you so you know, that what you did to me and the way you raised me has caused me to have such PTSD that I can't even do my own fucking laundry.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she was a mommy dearest borderline personality. And so she would hit me and rage at me over domestic stuff. And this was every weekend, you know, clean the house like Cinderella, work the whole yard. And then when you're done, I'm going to tell you, you did a shitty job. And now I have to redo everything you did. And I'm going to ignore you while you cry in pain about it.
Yeah. Ugh.
Over and over and over and over, day after day, week after week, year after year. So a lot of people raise their kids this way, of course. You know, I was born in 1976. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I am not the only person this happened to, you know? And those of us that went through that will be recovering for the rest of our lives. So
it's interesting because I think of, you know, a child of a parent with narcissism as being, I don't know, as dealing with a lot of shame and having to, I mean, even just reaching the point of wanting to deal with it and to work through it is like a huge step that a lot of people don't even get there.
Right. And I honestly would not blame anyone or feel like they were a failure if they couldn't get there because, you know, you cope the way you can. Yeah. Right. And if you're not surrounded by people who support this kind of deep evolutionary work, you know, like if you stayed in your small town or whatever, and you know, it's very easy in New York City to be fucking out there. You know what I mean? And like I had to go, it's like you can go to therapy and you can follow like somebody's lead, but if you really want to heal, ultimately you have to listen to yourself. And if you're going to do that, you got to be willing to be such a fucking weirdo about it because it's only your own body and mind that's going to tell you what you really have to do to change and grow. And so like I remember one day I was on the subway and I'm sitting there meditating and like it got so deep that I was like, I started to lean back. I won't lean too far away from the microphone to show you the visual because you guys can't see it anyway. But the point is I'm leaning back my head's like tilting to the side. I start to fucking drool. You know what I mean? Because in my mind, I'm like walking through my childhood home and like resolving all these feelings that I need to resolve about each room and what it triggers in me. Yeah. And I like start to like mumble to myself a little, like in this deep trance, drooling, head to the side, splayed out all over the train. We get to a stop, bing bong. I sort of come to life and I see a comic I know who I hadn't seen in a long time, who has a job warming up a very popular talk show. And I was like, can't say hi now. Yeah. Look like a crazy lady, because I am. And you just have to be willing to have those moments, you know, because it was doing stuff like that, weird outside of the box, undefined therapeutic things that I guided myself to that made me better.
Yeah.
How did this journey interact with the comedy you were making, or how you think about comedy?
It's such a good question. You make me feel like this is a Times interview. I did talk about it on stage. And one of the things, and I've told some of my stand-up students this actually, like it's very hard to translate the experience of having a narcissistic mother in short jokes. It's like, it's just such a big phenomenon, and it's so complex and complicated and hard to parse that like you can't really be like, moms, am I right? You know, it's like, it's not. So it's more for like sort of solo show format or, you know, longer storytelling bits. And so it was mostly through storytelling that I was able to kind of like work through some of it on stage in a story that was like mostly funny, but also deep and poignant.
And you did that in recent years? Or
I think, well, we met like four years ago, right? Yeah. It was right around that time that I entered this whole, you know, era of discovery and truth about all of that. And so the first big moment that I had with this was on Kevin Allison's Risk podcast. That was the first time I ever like told the real truth about what life with my mother was like. And several people tweeted at me and they were like, oh my God, wow, I'm not alone, you know, and that's always a big moment. So, yeah.
So in all of this, where is your daughter in all of this? Does she have a relationship with your mother, or how did that manifest
She does, and
itself?
she always maintained one. I never wanted to force them apart, so I would let them talk without me, you know what I mean? And, you know, I wasn't like, I'm not speaking to you. You know what I mean? It just was like, I just stopped calling and I said, I need you to stop calling me, you know, and maybe over the course of, let's say, 2 to 3 years, we talked a handful of times, you know, and every time it was horrible. It was horrible. And so, you know, I didn't like fully sever the connection, but
it wasn't like this dramatic thing. It was just...
Yeah, it just was like, I need space and I need to figure this out. And it wasn't until I said the phrase PTSD to my mother that she had a moment of clarity. And she said to me, you know, Carolyn, I looked up that PTSD and I thought, how could she have that? That's only for war people. But then I read about it and it turns out it's an epidemic. Oh my God. All you kids are suffering from that. What did we do?
Where's she from?
Central New York.
She's Italian.
Yeah. What did we do? And so she finally sort of did the learning and reading that I needed her to do the whole time. And she had been taking SSRIs for a couple years, and that was like new. So that I think set her up to be in a better frame of mind. Mm-hmm. And also she's married to a really nice guy who I think makes her feel loved and safe. And when you feel loved and safe, then you can kind of more easily and readily go, oh, let me examine these dark parts of myself that would normally cause me to head into a shame spiral, but I won't go as deep because I know this person here is not going to abandon me and I don't have to feel like the world's biggest asshole. Yeah. You know, it's hard for people who are engaging in negative behavior and being hurtful towards others to change, because if they stop behaving the way they're behaving and they examine it, they have to have that moment of true deep shame and disappointment with themselves and guilt. And it's like the person that you're hurting is probably not wanting you to feel that way, but it's just part of the process. And like, you know, my mother was so fucked up that she was like viewing that as like me wanting to punish her.
Right.
You know? And I'm like, bitch, you're the one who's continually punishing me.
Yeah.
You know?
So tell us about where you were in your life, like pre-motherhood, as motherhood was pending, or.
Well, I got pregnant when I was 28, which is so young for a New Yorker.
Mm-hmm.
And I was married, and I thought everything was fine. You know, I was excited to.
You were doing comedy.
I was doing comedy. You know, I was working day jobs as a temp, and I really was like, I got my husband, and we're gonna have a baby, and it's gonna be great. And the baby was born, and then various events unfolded that made me realize, you know, oh, this is not great the way that I thought it was. So I got divorced, and then I ended up moving in with my mother when I got divorced.
So what was the most challenging part at that time in your life of motherhood? Mothering the child or being the daughter? It's not either or, obviously.
I mean, you know, it's interesting because the year, it was 2 years, I think, that we all lived together, my daughter, me, and my mother. And
how old was Adriana?
Adriana was 4, like 3 turning 4, and then 5 turning 6 was when we moved back to New York. And, you know, it was fun. Like, in some ways it was fun. In other ways it was challenging. It would have made a great sitcom. I did a web series at that time by myself called The Widow and the Divorcee. And I just shot it with a little camera and edited it myself, even though I had no experience. And it's amazing how when you're at the bottom, like, you will find creative ways to express yourself. And
was your mom in it?
She sometimes was in it. Yeah. And so it was inspired by things she would say to me that like would in some ways drive me crazy. But in other ways I was like, this is comedy gold, you know?
Yeah.
And so I would like make the episode about something she said. Like, one episode was called Fine, right? And this was because she would say fine all the time. And I'm like in the shower in the episode, and I played my mother too. And so she walks into the bathroom and she's like, Carolyn, God damn it, turn the fan on when you're in the shower. I told you this a million fucking times, you know? And then I'm in the shower and I'm like, okay, you know, fine. And then ultimately the episode ends with us just going, fine, you know? And in the moment when you're experiencing it in real life, it's sort of like, this is painful. Like, this relationship is a struggle, you know, but then when you look at it in comedy, you can laugh at it because you're like, everything's a struggle. Yeah. How absurd, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's something really interesting there that like you have like the itch of comedy in you. Like like my sense is through all of this that like whatever is happening with you needs to like sort of go through that filter or like be expressed through that filter. Do you feel like?
Yeah. I mean, my grandparents died in a double suicide. And the first thing I thought was like, one day this will be great material. And I wasn't even a comic then. I was in college still.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, like if you're an artist, you cope through art.
Yeah.
So like the only way I can process everything is by being like, this is a story. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And lucky me, you know, I do use a lot of forms of expression. So if it's not comedy, it's going to be something I write. Right. If it's not something I write, it's going to be a story. If it's not a story, it's going to be a sketch. You know, there's always something available to me to take what I'm experiencing and make it something I can learn from. You know, you learn through the act of creation because that's how you're understanding what's happening to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some reflection, like how am I going to communicate this forces you to think about how does this sit with me? How do I relate to this?
And I also like to make art that lets other people experiencing tragic things know that they're not alone, you know? And a lot of people feel that way. Mm-hmm. But I just think for me, it's like my life has been coated in tragedy the whole time. And so I learned very early on, like, okay, Carolyn, one of the ways you can be a leader is by holding up a light for people who are experiencing the same types of things, but don't have this ability that you have to transform it through art, you know? And that's not because they're not talented. They just have different talents, you know? And so people who aren't creative in that way so appreciate like, oh, fuck, like, wow, like you made that accessible and understandable and I could have a catharsis through yours. And like, yeah, that's what it's for.
And I imagine it's partly just the habits we develop as people who make stuff all the time. So like when I was like having baby blues right after I had a baby, my solution for that wasn't like, oh, I need to go to therapy or talk about medication. I was like, I need to do morning pages. You know? Because
did you morning pages the PPD way?
My way through it. I mean, it was an actual PPD. I'm sure if it was, I should have done more than just morning pages for our listeners. But but it was, morning pages were an effective way for me to sort of get my sense of identity back, at least to an extent.
But what I think is really interesting about you is that a lot of it, I feel, comes through like not only the need, but also the confidence. Like I know I do this well. And so it is something that I need to do for other people to hear.
That's so interesting. And I very much appreciate you seeing me that way. But I would argue that the confidence comes on the back end. The confidence comes through the doing.
Right.
So it's not that I am so confident that I create and then do. It's that I am deeply lost without ultimately creating, putting my shit out there for other people to then validate me, and then I feel confident.
Yeah.
But you're not the only person who's said that I seem very confident. And that's good. I'm glad. You know, I feel confident while I perform, you know, and because I perform.
Yeah.
But it's my performance doesn't come from confidence. My confidence comes from performing. So like one of the things I'm doing in my job now is directing our shoots for our shows. And I love working with our host and being like, hey man, you're great. Now add this, now add this. And like, you know, we get such a good product. And like, I wish more of life were like that. You know, when you talking a minute ago about like the sad artist or the tortured artist or whatever, like, I don't think we need sadness or torture as an integral part of creation. I really don't. I think it's unavoidable in life, you know, but I do think that we can build a better enough world so that tragedy and sadness is fewer and further between. Like it doesn't have to be a fucking everyday experience, like
of creating, like
or just of living.
Your creative process is not painful. Or like angsty or like...
No,
how about
it's
this?
The only way I find release.
So show me. Like what's a day in your life?
Okay, well...
And I'm sure it varies a lot and I know it's been insane recently, but...
Yeah. Yesterday, I got up in time for my kid to be like, I'm leaving because I'm responsible and I don't need you to help me, bye, you know? But we like... So she gets up very early for school, and we've gotten to a point now where she can get herself ready. So I do sleep until like 10 minutes before she's out the door. So we just have this brief check-in where I'm like, do you have money? Do you have MetroCard? Do you have keys? And then, you know, then she can leave the house. And then I get up and immediately go to my computer and start working a little bit, put on some coffee, take a shower, come into my office, worked all day till 7:30 and then left and did a show in Harlem and then came home and put my kid to bed.
Are you working from, is your office in your apartment?
No, it's in Chelsea.
Oh, okay.
Right,
so you go
corner.
into the office. Yeah. And how many nights a week do you typically do shows?
2 to 3. Yeah, I don't want to do more than that. You know, I don't want to be without my kid all the time. And I work so hard in my day job, which is also in the industry. I don't feel like I need to get up more than that.
Yeah.
Where do you find time or space, like mentally and physically, to write new material?
I write as I speak. You know, I'm not the kind of comic who sits down and writes with a pen every day. And I think that that's a great discipline, and I admire people who do that. But I have written on paper during various points in my career.
I am familiar with pens.
But I put new material on its feet through my mouth.
Does Adriana ever come to your shows?
So if they're appropriate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you
not the
decide?
naked one.
Yeah. I did do a naked show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There are naked comedy shows. I'm very
and she
aware.
did not come to that.
She did not come to that. You know, I've done shows where it's like Baby and Me comedy, you know, and people are bringing their 2-year-olds, so then Adriana can come.
Right.
If I spent many years being like the entertainment mom at her elementary school, so all of those shows she came to. But like a show at a club, no.
Yeah.
The drinks are expensive. You don't want to bring your daughter.
The 2 drink minimum is too much to spend on your 13-year-old.
That's too much. So what if you guys are home together? How does that go?
We eat dinner and shoot the shit, and then she'll do her homework and talk to her dad on the computer, and I'll be putzing around in the other room, and then we watch something on Netflix together, and then that's it. I mean, it's very chill. It's, you know, it's kind of, we're sort of like roommates.
Yeah.
You know, our relationship is very open, you know. I ask her a lot of things. Hey, what do you think about this? You know, and then she'll give me honest feedback about what she wants. And I think a lot of people, I don't want to say envy that, but they at least admire it. You know, they're like, wow, you guys have such a good relationship. And I'm like, I
admire it. I love your like if people listen to your podcast, they'll hear it. But you guys have this banter that just feels like you're pals.
Yeah, we are pals.
Like you poke fun at each other.
But you know, she's not my best friend because she's 13.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm her mother, you know, and I do think that you can cultivate a palsy kind of relationship that also has boundaries, that also has clear roles and expectations.
Yeah.
Do you, so how did the impetus for the podcast start?
God,
Or what was the
I
impetus
do
of the
remember
podcast?
actually, because we were just having dinner like we do and just shooting the shit. And we were being so funny that, you know, I can't remember if she said it or if I said it, but one of us was like, we should start a podcast. And then it was that moment of like, ah, you know, and we just said, okay. So I just ordered the microphones on Amazon and that was it.
And then you started.
And how'd you choose
Yeah.
the name of it?
I just thought of it immediately. You know, again, it's that kind of improvisational brain that I was like, it's got to be called Daughter Knows Best. And I went to the computer immediately and was like, does anyone have this name? No. Oh my God, it's meant to be, you know.
And she's creative.
She's very creative. She's so smart. Jesus Christ, my kid is so smart and such a good person, a real thinker. You know, when she was little, I used to tell her, you have a scientific mind. And I never wanted her to lose that. And I always wanted her to think of herself as intellectual, as scientific, you know, and if in case she wanted to go into like STEM or whatever. I don't think she does, but she does do well in math and science. And she's a real kind of academic. I mean, it makes sense. Her father is an academic. So it's like, I'm a creative. He's an academic. I mean, this is in her blood, right? And I'm hoping she wants to go into politics. She's shown a lot of interest in politics. So I think, you know, she's got a good brain and a good heart, and that's a good combo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I want, like, for me as a parent, do I want my kids to go into politics? It just seems so brutal. Like, I want them to, in theory.
It's not as brutal as comedy. This whole, like, go into politics thing came up because when she was little, maybe 8 years old, we were walking by a park, and she was like, I wonder why this is designed this way. I feel that they should move this element over here, blah, 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 right? And I was like, yo, you should be an urban planner, right? And I got super into it. And then from there, it kind of like branched out further into politics. So, yeah, I mean, she does have visions for those types of things. And she certainly would have a liberal agenda. So I think you can vote for Adriana 2030. I don't know.
Is that what it is? But she also dances and sings, right? Like you.
She does, yeah. Yeah, but I have not pushed her to be a professional in the arts, nor have I dissuaded her from it.
You just tried to.
I just have let it be neutral and let her watch my journey and decide if she wants to go down that road.
Yeah, that reminds me of the question I wanted to ask earlier when you were talking about your mom. Because you said that having the mom that you had really informed how you parent,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense, of course. Are there like specific ways you try to be a mother to her that you feel like are maybe not reactions to, but like are informed by?
Oh,
your
yeah, for
experience
sure.
growing
I
up?
mean, so, and I want to be clear because I do want to be fair to my mother, right? Like, we are in a good place right now, and she has done a lot of work. And so, if I'm going to tell the story, I want to tell the whole story and not just, paint a picture of a monster, like,
Yeah.
and I want to give people hope that, like, I can't guarantee that what I did with my mother will work for anyone listening. And I can't say don't give up on the relationship because everyone knows what they have to do. But I will say anything is possible in life. Anything is possible. And I know sometimes you're in such a dark, oppressed, sad, bleak state that you don't believe that that's true. But I do think that is true. And people can change. Do they very often? No, not really. But if we didn't think things could change, why would we keep existing? You know what I mean? Like, why would people keep having kids if we didn't think it could all get better? What was the question?
How does having the relationship with your mother inform the way you parent?
So when I was growing up, because of my mother's condition, she was very cruel to me. And I think that was like the most hurtful part, in the first kind of expose moment that I had on Risk, I talked about like, I got hit a lot, but that really was the least of it. It's really the psychological and emotional abuse that hurts and fucks you up so bad. And that doesn't mean I think it's okay to hit your kids, by the way. But like, so when you're triggered by your own child, which will happen, you really have to be able to stop and say, I could say something so cunty and mean right now that would just ruin your whole world. Or I could be a well-adjusted adult and choose to be loving in the face of this difficult experience I'm having because of how your childlike behavior is making me feel, right? And nobody's going to get it perfect all the time, but that is one of the main things that I always focus on. Like, say the right thing, say the loving, supportive thing. Do not be mean and cruel and undercutting. And if you slip up, apologize immediately. Acknowledge the bad behavior. Say, I'm sorry. I just got frustrated because, this is whatever. Explain yourself. You know what I mean?
Did you feel a big identity shift when your daughter was born?
I mean, I think it took some time. I think I was a little naive. I was so young. It was easy for me to bounce back quickly. So I got back on stage 12 days after Adriana was born. I wouldn't recommend that per se. But I think at the time, I wasn't willing to experience an immediate identity shift. Yeah. And I wasn't willing to experience FOMO. You know what I mean? So I just was like, I'm back.
What was that set like?
It was, what was the show? It was Mortified. Which is the show where you read from your childhood diaries. And
so the material was already written.
The material was already written. I was wearing a huge giant pad, and I remember this photographer took a picture of me, and when she posted it, she was like, Carolyn had a baby 12 days ago. And I really thought, fuck yeah. I felt pressure, as all comedians do, not to take time off. And I mean, I guess it all worked out okay. Yeah. But I don't know how I might do it differently.
4 weeks after having Finn, I saw that you were teaching this stand-up class for women on Saturdays, right?
Yep.
And I was like, Lucas, I'm going to take stand-up. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm starting a stand-up class on Saturdays. Are you comfortable watching Finn every Saturday from like, well, it was in the afternoon
for 6 weeks. Yeah.
And he was like, do you really think like now's the right time to do that? And I just lost it. I was like, he was like, is this a good time to change careers? You're going to become a comic? And I was like, no, I'm doing it for fun. And I remember explaining to him that the reason I wanted to do it was because it was something that was so not purpose. It was not toward a goal of like anything. It wasn't toward a goal of keeping a baby alive. It wasn't toward a goal of like
career advancement,
writing a book again. It was like, I just want to do something where I feel like a person who has fun in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I wanted to do it. And so we got into this huge fight about it. And then the funny part was that in the middle of the night, so this was when Finn was like waking up every hour, every 2 hours. So Finn woke up, wouldn't go back to sleep. We had him in the bed between us. He finally fell asleep between us. And Lucas was like, are you still mad? And I was like, no, I was just like, let's go to sleep. He's like, take the stand-up class. And I was like, I don't want to talk about this right now. We're like whispering over the baby. And he was like, I guess I just don't understand. Like, why are you taking the class? Why don't you just do stand-up? And I was like, you can just do stand-up. And then I was like, you just don't think I'm funny? And he was like, I think you're funny.
I love a whisper fight. That's great like, comedy.
The most ridiculous
He's like,
thing.
Go on the computer right now. Sign up. I don't want you to tell people I'm holding you back. They're like, oh, great. It's sold out. See?
Basically. And so like for the next few days, he was like, are you going to take the class? And I was like, I don't know yet. I'm still deciding. And then I ended up, not taking it and having all these complex feelings about why I wasn't taking it.
And you never told me this until now.
No.
Wow.
I feel like I'll take
my next class is in January.
Amazing.
So
okay.
there you
I
go.
feel like I'll take it sometime, but I really wanted to take it right after having a baby. And I maintain that would have been a great thing for me, I think.
Yeah.
Besides the having to wear a huge pad.
And pump midway through. But other than that, it would have been a really good time.
Thanks so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Check out Laugh Exchange is the name of it.
That's right. You can find it in the App Store.
Amazing. And can you describe Laugh Exchange a little bit?
Sure. It's a comedy app that right now we feature 3 shows a week. Every show has a different theme. So this past week we did Music Monday, Dance Challenge, and Impressions. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Our shows are on from 12:30 to 9:30. That's Eastern time. So if you're in LA, it's a little earlier. Open for voting. We feature 6 to 8 comics every show. We pay all the comics in our show. We're really into supporting diverse and bold voices, and we hope to be the future of mobile comedy. It's my job.
Amazing.
Yay. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up next.
I could get past my low confidence quickly. I just didn't have time for it. It was a luxury.
Next episode, sculptor Christian Maychek. You guys, I have really big news. Next week on February 5th, Mary's novel, When You Read This, will be in stores. I've had the opportunity to read this book, and it is truly one of a kind and amazing. I'm excited for all of you to read it too. You can find it wherever books are sold. She's also launching her 12-city tour, so please check our website for her tour schedule to see if she's coming to a city near you. She would love to meet you.
I'm still here.